and welcome to Friday. We made it. We made it. A lot to discuss today, so we're going to get right at it. And we're starting today with numbers. Nova Scotia posted a $265 million surplus, but overall debt has climbed by $1.7 billion. So we're now at a $20 billion debt. Government spending is up more than 40% since 2021, and that's been driven largely by healthcare and public services. So, how do you square a surplus with rising debt, and what does it say about long-term sustainability? That's the big question. Hopefully we'll get some answers from Auditor General Kim Adair. She had some clear warnings and some clear recommendations, and we'll chat with the AG in just a moment. After that, going to shift gears a bit to Halifax's built environment. Author and architectural enthusiast Don Mikel is going to join us. He's going to talk about his new book. It's called Canadian Architectural Styles, a Field Guide, and it features more than 30 Halifax area buildings. We're going to talk about what that architecture says about our history, our values, and where we might be headed next. Then, 10:30, our week in politics. Boy, many of us woke up to the news this morning that Canada has reached a deal with Beijing that's going to allow tens of thousands of Chinese electric vehicles into the domestic market here. And in exchange, China is going to drop duties on canola products. This is the first big trade deal that the Prime Minister has made. So to break that down and also discuss a Prime Minister that's governing just shy of a majority, we've got political strategist Tim Powers, who will have our week in politics. Later on, we're going to turn to something that's happening on the ground right here in Halifax, and it's a new way of responding to people in crisis. The CARE team, they're now operating 24/7, and they offer community-based trauma-informed alternatives to police response for those non-emergency crises that creep up. We'll chat with Matt Reid from Seoul's Harbour Rescue Mission, who's going to walk us through just how it works, what they're seeing on the ground, and what it could mean for other communities facing the same issues. Then at 11 o'clock, we have earned it. The Friday free-for-all. That's where you come in. What do you want to talk about? Power rates, offshore wind, this new deal with China, maybe some viral international headlines. It's entirely up to you. We open the phone lines and hear what you have to think. Then a real treat after the news at noon. We have a Nova Scotia political roundtable. What's going on? Power bills, offshore wind, a very short legislative sitting last year. Federal leaders that have their eyes on rural and coastal Nova Scotia. What does this all what does this have to say? I mean, what does it say about our current political climate? Break it all down. We'll have Whynot and Jordi Morgan joining us for half an hour to, just discuss what's going on in Nova Scotia politics, and it's going to be a real treat for political junkies. Wrapping up the week with the weather outlook, we'll chat with meteorologist Allister Aalders. Sports with Cecil Wright, and lots going on in sports land with big moment for Nova Scotia curling, growing momentum for professional women's hockey in this city, and Moosehead's players, well, they're drawing the attention of the NHL draft. So there you go. Grab a coffee, settle in, stay with us. We've got a lot to cover this morning. But first up, we're looking at the state of Nova Scotia's finances and what the numbers are really telling us. Province reported a $265 million surplus, but overall debt has climbed. It's gone up $1.7 billion, now sitting at more than $20 billion. Annual government spending, that's up sharply in recent years, more than 40% since 2021. And a recent financial report is raising concerns about the long-term sustainability, transparency, and the amount of spending that is taking place outside the original budget process. So to help us understand what's behind all these numbers in the 2025 report and what may need to change, we're joined this morning by Nova Scotia Auditor General Kim Adair. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning. I'm pleased to be with you to talk about our report from this week. You've given a really good summary of the overall takeaways.
Excellent. Well, the report highlights an increasing debt load, and that was even in a year where official budget numbers had us at a surplus. So, what are the key drivers behind that increase in debt, and what risk does that pose for the financial future of this province?
Yes, okay. So the province did post a surplus in 4 of the last 5 years. But what's behind the number, of course, and that's where your question is getting at, is the fact that in order to post that surplus, there's been unanticipated revenue, and the province has in turn spent that unanticipated revenue. So spending is growing at a very, very fast pace, and you mentioned the 43% increase. Mm-hmm. Net debt is going up. What the main driver behind the growth in the net debt is the large investment in capital assets that has been happening in the last few years. Yeah. And I just want to point out, it's not for me to weigh in whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just we're trying to inform Nova Scotians about the overall financial picture. Mm-hmm. But there's been $2 billion in the last year invested in capital assets. So the big ones are Halifax Infirmary, Cape Breton redevelopment, nursing homes around the province. So those were the investments. But what happens when you have such major investments? The province needs to borrow to fund the cash to pay for it all. And when you get into borrowing, as we all know, that drives up your interest cost. So right now, in the year in question, the interest on that debt was over $750 million, and it's growing at a fast pace as well. So that's money that the province doesn't have to put toward programs like healthcare and education. So that's the interest on the debt. And the other area that you mentioned is future spending commitments. Yeah. We also note in our report, and these are what we call sustainability indicators, like all of these ones that we're talking about. Okay. So it causes you to reflect on, is it sustainable for the province to continue to have spending growing at such a fast pace, these huge investments in capital assets, continued borrowing, and then the future spending commitments is another number that went from just under $10 billion a few years ago to now at $30 billion. So if you just think, we're talking billions of dollars, and it's tripled in a very few years. And one of the reasons the province has been able to post surpluses is because of the strong economic growth coming out of the pandemic. Like our personal income tax is going up quickly, or we're all paying more quickly because of that growth. HST, corporate income tax. So the province had windfalls, you could call it that, and then that allowed them to be able to increase their spending at a fast pace and still post surpluses. So it's kind of quite an interesting story.
Yeah, and I mean, you do point out that the surplus revenues are being spent rather than applied to debt. What should the priorities be for surplus funds? I mean, traditionally, how are surplus funds handled by governments?
So that's totally the decision of the government of the day to decide their spending strategy and where they want to spend on their priorities, and also tax policy. It's important that folks understand that it's not for me to weigh in on those decisions of the government. We're the auditors, right? And we come along after the fact, and we audit the province's financial statements, and that was sort of the starting point for this report is our audit of the province, which I point out was a clean opinion, which is important for Nova Scotians to know, and that they've gotten clean opinions for the last 25 years. So that's very positive. That means that Nova Scotians can rely on these financial statements.
And that's important. That's important.
Yeah.
And the other piece of it, too, is that you note in the report that a significant portion of spending in recent years has been happening over budget without being debated or approved in the legislature. So, can you break down why that is a concern and the specific changes that you recommended to improve accountability in these situations?
Sure. So this is a point that I've been making for the last few years in this annual report. Nova Scotia, our Finance Act is unique and different from most all the other provinces in Canada.
So we're the only province in Canada that still has this or has this?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. Yes. Where so the original budget does go through a process in the legislature. It gets tabled, debated, voted on by our 55 elected MLAs. But when it comes to spending beyond that original budget, we're the only province where it does not go back to the floor of the legislature for a debate and approval. And the important piece of that, of course, is that your elected officials don't get the opportunity to question the government on the additional spending. And it's been that way for many years, but it's only been in the recent years that the dollars have been so significant. It was $1.6 billion in this most recent year. It was over the last 5 years, it's $6.7 billion of additional spending of public funds. And so I've made the recommendation each year that they open up the Finance Act and amend it and bring it in line, the same as it, to be similar to that of the other provinces across Canada.
And I mean, this recommendation, and I find it hard to square in my mind that your recommendations have seemingly fallen on deaf ears, because I come from a world where the AG gives a recommendation and you follow up on it ASAP. So I just, I have trouble in my mind trying to figure out why this recommendation or these recommendations have gone unaddressed year after year. What do you think is standing in the way?
Well, I have trouble with it as well, I have to admit. Most of our recommendations are adopted and approved and implemented. This is unique that this one, which I feel is very important, the finance ministers have indicated they feel that the status quo is just fine and that there is sufficient accountability behind all of the spending. So it's a situation where we agree to disagree. But I think it's important for my role to continue to restate this recommendation in hopes that at some point in the future, if the Finance Act ever does get opened up and amended, that our comments or my recommendations will be taken into consideration and addressed at that time.
So looking forward, what indicators should Nova Scotians be watching for to assess whether the province is moving toward a more sustainable fiscal path?
The pace at which spending grows going forward, the increase in net debt, and the future spending commitments. Those would be the three that I would focus on. Yeah,
because, I mean, annual spending has grown sharply since 2021. And, you know, driven largely by major increases in healthcare expenses, which I don't think anybody is faulting the government for spending money on healthcare. But, you know, how do we weigh the need for services against the sustainability of those rising costs?
That's the challenge. And there's no easy answer. And I would certainly admit that, there's a myriad of decisions to be made by the government going forward, whether it's on the spending side, tax policy. Will they continue to borrow debt? Those are the challenges before the province.
Nova Scotia's Auditor General Kim Adair, thank you so very much for your time and for helping us break down the 2025 report. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right.
You have an interesting show ahead this morning. So
lots going on. Lots going on. Appreciate you kicking us off.
Okay.
All right. Take care and have a great weekend. All right. It is 10:14. We're going to stop down and take a quick break. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. Good morning and welcome back. It is 10:17 here in the Todd Veinotte Show. And my next guest is someone who looks at cities the way others look at nature. Don Mikel is an architectural enthusiast who's walked tens of thousands of steps through more than 170 Canadian communities, documenting how our buildings reflect who we are, where we've been, and what we value. His new book, Canadian Architectural Styles, A Field Guide, it pulls together more than 1,000 photographs and features over 30 buildings from right here in Halifax. Joining us to talk about how to read those stories and what they reveal about cities like Halifax, we have Don Mikel. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. And listen, Halifax has layers of history, from British colonial buildings to post-war modernism. And of course, we have a whole slew of new glass towers. When you walk a city like Halifax, what architectural styles immediately signal our historical roots?
Well, one of the great things about Halifax is it's one of the cradles of Canadian culture. So in a city like this, you're looking for the earliest buildings, but a city like this has buildings from every period, which makes it great. It's like its own book of architectural styles.
Yeah, and I mean, you describe architecture as having a social history rather than a natural one. Halifax certainly has experienced long periods where growth was a little slower and then rapid development would kick in. So, how do those boom and pause cycles tend to show up in a city's architecture?
Oh, well, they show up in basically in the built culture, because you've got Halifax was a very important early British naval center, and so you've got some very good buildings from that period. And then because of fishing and forestry and things like that in the 19th century, you've got some great Victorian buildings, picturesque styles. And then throughout the 20th century, I mean, most of Canada boomed in the 50s, so you've got suburbs from the 50s, 60s, 70s. So there's lots of stuff. And of course, the downtown develops, and you've got everything from early 19th century right up to postmodern.
Wow. All right. So tell us about some of the Halifax buildings that made it into the book.
Oh, well, of course, the Admiralty Building, the Round Church, the Clock Tower, I know it as the Music Pavilion, but I think it's called the Princess Pavilion. Those are some of the earliest late 18th century houses. And quite a few streets of things like Thornton House, and then more later Victorian houses along Yonge Avenue and other parts of the city, right up to, of course, the legislature and the Lieutenant Governor's house are amazing houses. Great churches. The courthouse, designed by William Thomas, which is a fantastic Neo-Palladian building.
The courthouse on Spring Garden Road?
Yeah, there's one building I'd like to make reference to, which is the Spring Garden Library, which I don't know if Halifax realizes how important it is. It's in the book. It's a very important modern classical building.
Yeah. Is that probably the most modern building that from Halifax that's in the book?
Oh, no. I'm just trying to think. I can't remember. There's an Eaton's building. There are some postmodern buildings downtown, and I'm just trying to remember. I think there's one by. It's not in the book, but Brian McKay Lyons has a very, very, very nice building downtown. But really, when you come to a city like Halifax, you focus on its strengths, and its strengths are the older buildings. And, Nova Scotia in general probably has the most of the earliest buildings in the country.
So, you point out that regional adaptations to climate and geography help define Canadian architecture. And, certainly here in Halifax, we've got it all: salt air, wind, coastal weather. How should climate and geography shape design choices here in Nova Scotia? Oh, well,
you have only to look at the buildings themselves. I mean, many houses are shingle style, which is an adaptation to the environment. Some cities in other places, like Guelph, where I'm from, are stone. But here, if you're looking at masonry, it's usually brick, unless it's a big stone building, like the legislature. And climate, of course, impacts of all Canadian architecture. Our houses tend to be more compact. Our kitchens tend to be attached to the back in tails. If you go further south, sometimes you find kitchens detached from the house, a walk away. So
Now, it's interesting. I love the title of the book, Canadian Architectural Styles, a Field Guide.
Right.
It's almost like you're framing this like bird watching.
It is like that. It's meant to be. It's 47 chapters beginning in New France in 1630. And a traveler or a local can take the book out and look at any building. And the number of photographs allows me to show all the variations of each style. So you can look around and find, just about everything. And unlike birds, they don't fly away. So you can study them for a while. I just noticed, just to go back to your question about modern buildings, the Sexton Gym, which is, I think, part of Tons, is a fantastic building from the 60s. The Duke Tower is interesting and probably controversial because brutalism is going through a period of some people love it, some people hate it, some people think brutalist buildings are a carbuncle in the middle of the city. Other people think it's a fantastic thing.
So Duke Tower is an example of
brutalist architecture. Big
really?
Heavy concrete 1970s buildings.
Okay.
And then a really interesting one that I put in was, and I probably won't say it right, but the Umma Masjid, which is a very good example of postmodern, because it takes the images of a mosque, traditional mosque, and reworks them into a new design where it's clear that it's a mosque, but it's using new sort of architectural language to describe it, and it's a very nice example.
Excellent. So, everyday residents who might not think of themselves as architecture buffs, what is a simple way that people in Halifax can start, reading their city differently after reading your book?
Well, think about an art gallery you pay to go into and you look at the pictures. A city is an art gallery in itself that you don't have to pay for, and you can walk around and see ancient Rome, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, modernism. You can see everything just walking up and down the street. Yeah.
The book also talks about how Canadian cities both absorb and resist American influence. I well imagine that has been a struggle in architecture for a long time.
Well, it's more an adaptation because all of our styles are international styles, as is true of everywhere. Same with the U.S., same with Britain. And they have their origins, and we pick up some things from the U.S., a lot of things from Britain. And an example is the prairie style. We don't have a lot of it, but we had an architect in Ottawa, Francis Conroy Sullivan. He actually worked with Frank Lloyd Wright, but he adapted the prairie style to a more Canadian form because the American prairie style is meant to be horizontal, to reflect the prairie, but this not so much in Canada. So it's a more vertical style as practiced by Francis Conroy Sullivan.
And so do you see that, like Canadian architecture just putting their own unique spin?
Absolutely. This is why it's so important, because each country adapted the style, but it's what each country does with it in terms of their materials, their culture, their climate, the way particular architects and home builders interpret it. That's what makes Canadian architecture special and not inferior to other people's architecture. We have a piece of the puzzle and a contribution, and some of the great Canadian architects, Frank Gehry, who was the most important architect in the world, who died a couple of weeks ago, was Canadian. So and people like Douglas Cardinal and Moishe Safdie, these are all great international architects coming from Canada.
Excellent. And not just Halifax making it to the book. You have other buildings, structures in Nova Scotia. Can you tell us a few of those?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, but I've got a lot of 18th century ones. And one a great discovery is the Jesuit House in Newport Landing. And that's where Sherman Hines lives. And I went there. And I said, is this a 1756 house from the Margaret McBurney book? And he said, it's from the Margaret McBurney book, but it's not 1756. It was bought in 1756. It was a French Jesuit house, and he showed me through it.
Wow.
The basement has rounded rooms for ammunition and things like that, and the other floors were a Jesuit house. And his documentation shows it dates to 1699, which probably makes it the oldest house in Nova Scotia. So there are interesting things to find along the way.
Yeah.
But all these very early Georgian houses in Annapolis and other communities like this, Sherbourne, are very interesting. And unique. Yeah.
Well, listen, that is fantastic. Canadian Architectural Styles, a field guide written by Don Mikel. I really appreciate you coming in this morning, and thank you so much for this look at our architectural history here in town.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. It is 10:28. We're going to take a quick break. Blake Priddle is standing by with the news. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. Good morning and welcome back to the show. Well, Canadian politics certainly in a rare moment of flux. New Prime Minister trying to govern just shy of a majority. The opposition is recalibrating with a leadership review planned for later this month. Just hearing this morning about a new deal with China that will include EVs, canola, and lobster, which of course is very important down this part of the world. The Prime Minister saying that dealing with China was, quote, more predictable than dealing with the U.S. Provinces are pushing harder on energy and trade internationally. Canada continues to navigate this tense relationship with the U.S. And, of course, there are renewed questions about Arctic security and sovereignty. So to help make sense of where Canadian politics is heading and what these shifts could mean for, governments provincially, voters, joining us now is political strategist and vice chair at Summa Strategies, Tim Powers. Welcome back to the show, Tim.
Lisa, with all of that on the menu, I think I better grab a beer. My God, that's a lot for a Friday morning.
Get one for me while you're at it.
I'll get you something harder because you got to talk for 3 hours. I only got 10 minutes, so it's perfect.
So listen, can you give me a quick overview? I know that, we're all just sort of waking up to this news about the deal with China, but, initially, what are your first thoughts about this?
Well, look, I think for our region, Atlantic Canada, obviously there's some positives in there, noting they don't kick in till the beginning of March, and we'll have to see them kick in. The Chinese are notorious for doing something and then changing their mind if it doesn't suit their interests. But on the surface, this looks positive for lobster fishers, crab fishers, and others who have been subject to those tariffs. And we have a lot of fishers in Atlantic Canada that want bigger market share in China. So that's positive. For the canola farmers out west and in Ontario, there's some good news there. We've seen already, Lisa, Premier Ford react with I would call it managed disappointment over the opening of the Canadian market, or reopening of Canadian markets to Chinese electric vehicles. But instead of forcefully condemning the Prime Minister, he's moved to let's do something for our auto manufacturers, which probably sets up the next aspect of this. So on the surface, it looks positive. But again, with the Chinese in this difficult global trading environment in which we operate, the proof will be what happens or doesn't happen after March 1st when a lot of this stuff kicks in. Yeah,
I mean, these trade deals in general, and this is all occurring with Prime Minister Carney being the first Canadian Prime Minister to be in Beijing in over 8 years. So, this tells us, I think, more about canola and lobster. This tells us more about a complete recalibration of our strategy with China.
Yes. I mean, the thing with China is you're always recalibrating. Campbell Clark in the Globe and Mail wrote a great piece about this last week, how Stephen Harper went through this, how Justin Trudeau, who was the last prime minister to visit China, went through this. I mean, and what Campbell pointed out, and I think, again, if people have not read it, I encourage them to do it, is, today you're a great friend to China, a great opportunity, but he said, look at what's happening with Japan and other long-standing Chinese trade partners. When they get irritated, they're bigger and powerful enough, like, I don't know, somebody to the south to act. Again, not saying we shouldn't do business with China. We have to do business with China. We have to find a way to do it. We also have to work to try and stack the tables to our greatest advantage. And that's harder to do when you're smaller and you're the seller. And the buyer has other options in this case. But again, I think good first steps with Carney and what he's trying to do there. But the Chinese play, as history tells us, a very, very long game. So we should be prepared for that with them.
All right. Switching gears ever so slightly, Pierre Poilievre was in Nova Scotia this week. Of course, he is still facing a leadership review after losing the 2025 election. And, now talking about a rural reboot. Do you think this is course correction or a sign that the party is still struggling to broaden its appeal, to broaden its scope?
Well, I think specifically on that visit, look, Chris d'Entremont, of course, across the floor. I think Pierre Poilievre was in Yarmouth, which is in Chris's riding. Let's not lose sight of the immediate. Pierre Poilievre, I think, will do very well in his leadership review, but he's working to ensure that. So while Chris may have crossed over, and I think he was in Rick Perkins, the former MP Rick Perkins' riding also, he's trying to make sure that the people who were there who supported Chris and Rick as Conservatives come and support him in Calgary. So that's important for Pierre Poilievre and his immediate politics, because if he doesn't do well in that, it doesn't matter what happens after the fact. What's really interesting to me, Lisa, I think it's CBC are reporting this morning that Steve Outhouse, a Nova Scotian, who is now Pierre's campaign manager, has reached out to Tim Houston's office as well as Doug Ford's office to try and bury the hatchet and improve relations there.
Yeah, trying to thaw that frosty relationship that seems to have been established between the provinces and the federal Conservative leader. Yeah,
and I think if that is true, that is a smart move by the Conservatives. Both Premier Houston and Premier Ford are well respected. They have strong support in their provinces, particularly among their party apparatus as it relates to Atlantic Canada. The Conservatives, as you know, were polling really well in Atlantic Canada heading into the election, particularly when Justin Trudeau was there. They were hoping to make big gains, and they didn't. So any future Conservative government, not unlike Stephen Harper's governments through 2006 to 2015, needed support in Atlantic Canada. So, Poilievre has to play to make sure that he can get that back. Talking about rural issues is so important in our provinces because we still have a large rural population, and they do feel disconnected from, what happens in Halifax, St. John's, Moncton, Fredericton, Charlottetown. So all of those things are important.
Yeah, and, you mentioned Chris d'Entremont crossing the floor. I mean, Mark Carney is governing just one seat shy of a majority. And, I mean, so far, floor crossings have gotten him to this place and strengthened his position, but how stable? That's not a sustainable approach. I mean, how long can that realistically hold?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, it'll be interesting to see, right? Because, again, I think I shared this with Dan last week, and I know you've got some really attuned listeners there. The Ottawa rumor, Lisa, for all that's worth, might be worth another drink for you, is that, there will be some more floor crossing. They're going to try and stage that floor crossing sometime, but slightly before or after Pierre Poilievre's leadership vote. So that will create more of a internal crisis in the Conservatives, because then Mark Carney will have a de facto majority. Yeah, I mean, stable, unstable. I mean, how do we rate that in this world? Yeah. I think the Liberals, are trying to govern with a majority. If they can get some more people over there, they will view it as a sign that they have a majority government. But, another flag to fly is at some point, there are going to be a series of by-elections. We know of one that has to come in the next 6 months. That's Chrystia Freeland, who officially resigned as of last Friday. There are expected to be more. So, how long will that majority last? Does Carney at some point look to get go to the electorate and say, give me a majority? I don't think we're there yet, but all of those things will impact the stability of the Canadian government, as will all these world affairs. I mean, quite frankly, I think if Donald Trump is as unwieldy as he currently is, that doesn't engender a large appetite in Canada for an election, and probably gives Carney rope and a highway to travel on.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that was going to be my next question, is Canada is now dealing with renewed trade conflict with the U.S., and that's the understatement of the year. But, we've got the pressures on the Arctic, Greenland security. It's all sort of coming together at once. Is Ottawa prepared for this level of geopolitical strain on all these fronts at once?
I don't think anybody is. I don't even think America is prepared for it. I think, Trump is going at such a pace that he's got so many different things happening. Greenland, the trouble in Minneapolis, Venezuela. There's so many balls in the air and so many things happening. The bigger concern is there going to be some kind of, geopolitical accident or major misstep that impacts all of us. Not to get alarmist, but that could be real. I mean, Greenland is the spectacle of French troops from NATO, German troops from NATO, going to Greenland to protect Greenland from America, a NATO partner, is just bizarre.
Yeah. It just gets more and more bizarre each morning when we wake up. All right, listen, we'll leave it there for this week. Tim Powers from Summa Strategies, Abacus Data. Thank you so much for helping us tackle some of these big political issues from the week.
I just transferred a few bucks to Vanessa. She's going to get you a bottle of rum so you can survive, Lisa. Okay, the rest of the day?
Thank you so much.
That's your gift from the Newfoundlanders. Take care, Lisa. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thank you so much, Tim Powers. All right, it is 10:45. We're going to take a quick break. And on the other side, we're going to be talking about the crisis team that provides alternative response to people in distress. They've moved to a 24/7 model. We'll find out why. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the show. It is 10:49, and Halifax is trying a new approach to how we respond to people in crisis. A shift from traditional emergency services that would likely involve police to more community-based ones designed to meet people where they're at. So last year, Halifax Regional Council approved a pilot project called the Crisis Assistance and Response Team, or CARE. And the aim was providing compassionate, trauma-informed support for people experiencing non-emergency distress. So things like mental health crises, substance use, just overall well-being. And I got to tell you, when I was sitting on the Board of Police Commissioners, I dreamed of something like this. Joining us today to talk about how the initiative works, what it means for people in communities in and around Halifax, we have Matt Reid, Director of Mobile Ministries from Seoul's Harbour Rescue Mission, and Bamidele Bello, who is the Alternative Response Manager at HRM Community Safety with the Community Safety Team. Welcome to the show, folks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
All right. So listen, can, perhaps, Bamidele, I'll get you to start by explaining how the CARE team actually operates day to day. And then I'll get Matt to, tell us how Seoul's Harbour, they fit into the response model.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So the CARE team, with the partners comprise of 211 Nova Scotia and Seoul's Harbour. So 211, they are the intake partner. They take the calls, and when it is suitable to do so, they dispatch the CARE team. So you can access CARE by calling 211. The navigators are trained to interact with the callers and determine, they'll go through eligibility questions with the caller, and then when it is safe to do so, because CARE is not an emergency response, and because the service is provided by community partners, we have to ensure that the staff that will be providing the in-person support, that's the CARE mobile team, that they are safe. So the navigator would also ask questions to ensure that safety can be guaranteed, and then they dispatch the care team when it is not possible to resolve the crisis over the phone. And the care team will usually comprise of 2 people in a vehicle. They drive to the location, and then as much as possible, they try to resolve the crisis.
All right. So now, Matt, what is Souls Harbour's role in all of this? How did you folks get involved?
Well, we partner with the city. This is ultimately the city's initiatives, and we're excited and happy to be a part of this initiative to change how crisis response and how we service the community. So our role is that we're a service provider providing the care team. And so we have a group of people that are well trained in assisting in crisis. And when the 211 has made the decision appropriate that for us to respond, our teams are hitting the streets and showing up in person to journey with somebody in their crisis.
So now, and as we said off the top, the program is meant to be an alternative to police involvement for nonviolent situations. Without getting too specific, what types of calls have you been finding yourselves responding to so far, and what kind of difference are you seeing with this approach on the ground?
Well, it's always a collaborative approach. When we show up, we're there to journey with. It can be, we've seen from unhoused to just, life is a little too much today for some people, the circumstances around what they're going through, and they just need that extra peer support to come into their home, journey with them, share what resources are available if there's something that's needed in the situation, and just have structured, supportive conversations as is the biggest part of this team.
So now, Dele, the care service expanded to 24/7 this month. What lessons did you learn from the initial pilot project phase that has sort of shaped how this full-time model will work?
Thank you so much for that. So the mandate for care service is to ensure that we provide timely in-person support and intervention to individuals in distress with the aim to stabilize the situation and connect them with appropriate resources. So that has been how the service has implemented to date, and we'll be moving that forward even into the 24/7 service.
Yeah. Part of the mission is helping people connect to longer term supports after the initial crisis is over. What are some of the biggest gaps that you folks are seeing in the system, and how does CARE help fill that gap?
So like you said, CARE does not do case management. In the immediate, they resolve the crisis and then connect the person in crisis to for ongoing support. So basically, I'll say as much as possible, we've enjoyed support from other partners because of the collaboration, the efforts at collaboration that had been made and that we continue to make. So as more, I'll not say that there have been much challenges because we've had good relationship with several service partners.
Excellent. And Matt, Halifax is one of the first places in Atlantic Canada to try this model, this approach. When developing this program, what other did you draw from experiences from other municipalities?
Absolutely. Ourselves at Souls Harbour and members of the city were able to go to other places in Canada to witness, to observe what other programs are doing in Ottawa and Edmonton and take away their lessons, what's really working well in their program, what challenges they have faced, and then to be able to bring that information back into our city, into our community and say, hey, what can we apply and how can we structure a program to ensure that we're successful?
And now you mentioned earlier that you work with 211. 211 is the provincial social services hotline, I guess, for want of a better term, where people can go and get connected with services. But do you also work alongside 911, recognizing that people in a crisis may just automatically call that number? Do you work alongside those partners to make sure that people are hooked up with the right support at the right time?
I'll say yes, just that we have not formally integrated that into the system for now. So we're working on that. What we have is a phased approach in implementing the care. So right now, the way to access care is through 211. But we are, like I said, we enjoy good collaboration with other partners, including the police and IAS. So we're working closely with them to ensure a formal pathway whereby calls that go to 911, but they see that they are better suited for care, could be handled without police presence. Such calls will be diverted to 211 so that they are transferred to care. So we are on it. It's just not concluded yet.
And, that's so important that, we recognize that police shouldn't be handling every single call that they get. And, care really does have the trained responders that can focus on things like de-escalation and safety planning, that sort of thing.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we'll leave that there for now. Bamidele Bello, thank you so much. Dela is the Alternative Response Manager with HRM's Community Safety Team, and also Matt Reid, Director of Mobile Ministries from Seoul's Harbour Rescue Mission. Thank you so much for your incredible work on this initiative, and I look forward to seeing it make a real difference in our community.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, Lisa.
Have a great weekend. It is 10:57, and we are going to stop for a news break. Blake Priddle is standing by, and after the news, it is the open hour, the Friday free-for-all. This is your turn, folks. If you want to get on the phone lines now and line up, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. If you have heard something so far that this morning that has sparked your interest, give us a call and we'll talk about it. But no topic is off limits. We're going to stop down for the news. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. And we made it to Friday. Friday after 11, you know what time it is. It's the Friday free-for-all. Open hour. We want your voice on all the big issues making waves today. 405-6000 is the number, or 1-877-801-8255 are the numbers to call. No shortage of things to talk about. Perhaps you've heard something so far this morning that's tweaked your interest, but also power bills. Still dealing with that. We're frustrated with the rising cost of electricity. There's a controversial utility rate hike that the hearing has taken place, and critics are accusing Premier Tim Houston of staying silent about that rate hike hearing while people continue to struggle with affordability and the billing problems from Nova Scotia Power. At the same time, renewable energy might be coming to the doorstep. There's a French energy firm that's eyeing offshore wind projects in the waters off the province here. And it's part of a broader plan that would turn this province into a hub for clean energy. Perhaps that's something you want to discuss. Province says the number of people in shelters and hotels has dropped dramatically. It's down roughly 86%, and that's a huge shift in the homelessness picture here in Nova Scotia. What do you think is driving this change, and does it really reflect progress? Certainly, we're not seeing rents going down. In fact, here in Halifax, we're bucking the trend nationally, where nationally rents are down a little over 2%. Here in Halifax, they're actually up over 1%. National and international stories that everyone's talking about. Of course, Donald Trump and his trip to a Detroit auto plant earlier this week, where he flipped off a worker and told him directly where he could go. Perhaps that's something you want to discuss as well. And also, we heard yesterday that the opposition leader in Venezuela who won the Nobel Peace Prize, she actually presented it to Donald Trump yesterday. You cannot make this up. I could not write this novel if I wanted to. First up this morning, though, at 405-6000, we have Ron on the line. Good morning and welcome to the show for a Friday.
Hi, Lisa. Great to hear your voice on there. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're just keeping the ship afloat for Dan. He's back in a week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you something. Years ago when Rick was on, you weren't part of that Double X Files, were you?
Yes, I was on occasion.
You were?
Yep. Certainly.
That was a great show. Those days are missed greatly by me. I love those shows.
Oh, listen, I pause every time I walk into the studio and see the plaque on the wall declaring this space Rick Howe Studios. So yes, and missed and never forgotten.
Trivia Thursdays too. I really miss that.
What's on your mind?
Well, yesterday we were talking about the cannabis and the illegal places that are being sold and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something else that kind of been bothering me since Christmas. I've seen this ad on TV with the health minister. And I'm just wondering, is that necessary that he gets on there and starts talking about this sort of thing? And
now, which ad are you referring to? I'm not familiar with this.
Well, Dr. Strang, he's on. And yeah.
Okay, and he's talking about...
He's just talking about the cannabis and how it's illegal and it shouldn't be sold because it's not being tested properly and it could be hazardous to your health and all this stuff. And I feel very uncomfortable with that. I don't think that should be necessary that he's on there. I just change the channel every time I see it because I just think it's wrong. I don't know who put him up to that. If he agreed to it or.
So what is it about it what is it about that burns your biscuits?
I just don't. I think it's below him. I think he should stick to what he's, hired for. He's health minister. I don't know. Maybe Tim Houston should be on there if it's a problem or something. But anyway, besides that, you were saying about all the different places that the shops are being set up. I mean, they've been around for a long time. And so you were saying that's all on, I don't know if this is right words to say, but like native lands, right?
Indigenous. Yep, so, indigenous lands.
So if that's the case, it looks like they own like most of Nova Scotia because I see these things everywhere. So is it always has to be on Indigenous land if they are going to do this?
That's a good question. I do not know the answer to that. No.
Okay,
if anybody does, 405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255, definitely the numbers to call to set us straight. But no, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, just not going to take your time, but I drive up the valley in between spring and fall a lot, and I'm all around the New Ross section, Berwick, all through that area. And you see them up all the time. They're right on the side of the road. They got signs everywhere and where you can go and get it. And then my friend says, well, that just got busted. So that's down, but it will be back up in a couple of days. Sure enough, they just moved down the road and set it up again. I mean, these are just sold in trailers or something like that. They just set them up. And they sell more than just pot, too. I mean, selling mushrooms and, oil and gummies,
all assortment of cannabis products are available.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, are they really always on their land, or are they just setting up wherever they want to?
That's a very good question. I mean, any of the ones that I have seen are on Indigenous lands. So
usually there are true Canadian areas. But
all right, well, throw that question out there. I thank you for your time, Ron.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, take care and have a great weekend. It is 11:11 here on the Todd Veinotte Show, and 405-6000, the number to call, or 1-877-801-8255. And I think we've got Rick, who's going to be joining us on the line. Hey, Rick, good morning and welcome.
Oh, good morning, Lisa. Look,
how goes the battle with you?
Well, it's just a small battle, but it's a battle that everybody seems to be having, and it's with Nova Scotia Power.
Okay. What's your situation?
Well, it's just a little different. We have a sort of like a cottage. It's not even a cottage, really, but doesn't matter, down in the valley, and there's power hooked up, okay, but the average bill is about $5 every 2 months. There's nothing going on in the winter.
No, just basically a fee.
A light bulb.
Just a fee that indicates that the lights are installed, basically.
Yeah, exactly. There's a meter there. It's an analog meter. And back in the summer, the meter was read by one of their expert meter readers. And and he or she made an error of 1,000 kilowatt hours.
Oh, good heavens!
Okay?
How did that translate into dollars?
$300 approximately. Anyway, where the average bill would be the hookup fee, which is 40 some odd dollars, must be $5 for power over 2 months. So I went through several hoops to get to Donna, and she seemed to be the person who could make this right.
Yeah.
And she said, "Don't pay the bill, don't do this."
Well, that's easy for her to say. It's not her credit rating.
Well, yeah, no, that didn't even matter really. But the point was that I just followed those instructions, and then the next bill came, and it didn't erase the 1,000 kilowatt hours. Ugh. It estimated the bill based on the 1,000 kilowatt hours overcharging. Okay, so then there was a big long list of things that happened, and this amount and that amount, and then we ended up having a bill for it's not in front of me, but somewhere between $100 and $150. Okay, which again was grossly overcharged. Okay, so we paid the $45. Just sort of having a guess of what the normal bill would be, and then we just got the new one. And again, there's no electricity. Here's the other thing: the average electricity for this building over the past 11 years is 0.4 kilowatt hours per day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I know people who have received these bills and actually jumped in the car and driven to their cottage to make sure that the power was shut off because they thought, oh my God, did I forget to shut off the power when I locked up for the season?
Well, there's that, and we were asked to photograph our meter, and again, it's not a smart meter; it's an analog meter.
Yep.
So it's easy to read. I know how to do it. I mean, can you imagine if you're a professional meter reader and you make a mistake of 1,000 kilowatt hours? It's just it's untenable.
Yeah. All right. Listen, Rick, I'll have to leave that there. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Just another one.
All right. Take care and have a great one. Thanks. It is 902-405-6000, the number to call. It is 11:15. Patrick is waiting on the line. We have room for you as well. Give us a call if you would. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. 11:18 is the time, and we've got cloudy skies, and we're at 4 degrees right now. Things are going to cool off a bit as the day progresses. We are in the middle of the Friday free-for-all. Listen, you've listened to me yammer on all week. This is your opportunity to chat. 902-405-6000 is the number, or if you're out of town, 1-877-801-8255. We'll pick up the tab. And joining us on the show right now is Patrick. Patrick, thank you so much for hanging on.
Good morning, Lisa. And your yammering is quite enjoyable.
Oh, well, thank you.
Don't worry about that.
What's on your mind today?
Well, I was listening to your interview with Kim Adair this morning.
Yes.
And it was very informative and great interviewer. Very, very well done. Years ago, I used to work for Department of Transportation. Mm-hmm. And I think a piece that a lot of people may not know or is missing from the process when it comes to unapproved spending is that when the Center Treasury Board gives out your budget, back in the day, we would get say $10 million to do snow and ice control in Cape Breton for the entire island, and we would tell them straight up that that's not enough. There's no way you can do it for that amount of money, not when salt is $115 a ton, right? We need $20 million. We would get $10 million in our budget. That's what would be approved. And then we would spend $20 because you just can't stop plowing the roads.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So I think this process where you're just ignored up front, we could tell them. I could tell them right now, it's going to cost you, $20 to $25 million probably to do snow and ice control in Cape Breton, minimum.
But I'm thinking
if you have a good winter.
Yeah, exactly. That's on a good winter. But I'm thinking a lot of this money that is being spent outside of the budget process, that's not all for winter ice and snow control.
Oh no, absolutely not. But I'm sure that's rampant across.
Sure. Yeah.
Government, where
definitely we experienced that at HRM. I mean, as a counselor, I certainly remember Public Works coming to us and saying, "Hey, listen, we're a couple million over budget, and it's because of storms X, Y, Z." So understand completely that it happens, but I guess what really concerns me, and I think that's what the AG was getting at, is that this is starting to look less and less like one-offs and more like a consistent spending pattern.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at as well.
Yeah,
is that we again right across government, any program where the people on the ground delivering the program can tell you. You're not giving us enough to deliver the program you want us to deliver.
Yeah.
But in order to balance the
I guess, yeah, and I guess that's my concern too. Is this all just an economic shell game? We'll give you the $10 billion in the budget, so we'll keep the budget under a certain level so we can brag. Yes, we've balanced the budget, when in reality it is far from balanced.
Yeah, and I think that is the whole budget process within government.
Yeah, that
I think and I don't know, maybe if you could find somebody willing to talk from Treasury Board, you can maybe press them on that and see what kind of response you get.
Yeah. Now, do you have concerns about the AG's recommendations being ignored year after year? I mean, as Kim Adair pointed out, this is not the first time that she has shone a spotlight on this spending that's taking place outside of the budgetary process.
I think it always comes back to accountability. How do you hold what do you do if they don't follow her recommendation, particularly when they say, yes, great recommendation, we will follow it, and then do nothing?
Yeah.
What is the consequence of that?
And as it sounds right now, there are no consequences to ignoring the AG's recommendations. And I guess that's, as I said earlier, that's difficult for me to square in my mind, because I come from a world where the Auditor General tells you or gives you a recommendation and you follow it. That's, there's a path that's set out as to how you can reach that goal. Even if it takes several years to do so. You put that in motion at least.
Well, and my experience, and it's not recent, so perhaps things have changed. But my experience was, if you didn't agree with the Auditor General's recommendation, you would say so. And if you had no intention of implementing it, you would say so. We agree that this is a problem, but we're not going to do anything about it. So but if you've committed to implementing, which again, back when I was in the government, in the workforce, you had a lot. We put a lot of effort into meeting our obligation to adhere to the Auditor General's recommendation.
All right. Listen, thank you so much for that, Patrick. Really appreciate your time and perspective from behind the front lines.
Thank you. You have a good day.
Yes, have a great weekend. Thank you. 902-405-6000 is the number, 1-877-801-8255. It is 11:25, and as we pointed out earlier, there's no shortage of things to talk about. And did you see the story about the grandma down in the States who bought a Barbie for her granddaughter. It was one of those special PWHL Barbies, and of course only available in Canada. So she bought it and had it shipped to her home in the United States. Ended up with an invoice for $802 just for the tariffs alone. This on a $30 Barbie doll. So if you heard about that, perhaps that's something you want to talk about. We've got Chris on the line this morning. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Lisa?
So far, so good. What can we do for you?
You know what? You're a shammer, but you're a really good shammer.
Okay.
Seriously, you do your job well.
Well,
like, your Q104 days, you got lots of, experience.
Well, yeah, this is a much different beast, keeping this ship afloat, though.
It's a different animal.
Yeah.
Right.
What's on your mind?
Oh, geez. What's on my mind? You got all day?
Well, I've got a half hour at least.
Really? No, I won't take up. I'll leave time. I'll share the time with other listeners.
Okay.
But anyways, here's what I'm thinking, Lisa.
Yep.
Here's what I'm thinking. All right. The Women's Professional Hockey League.
Yeah.
They should get a team here.
Oh.
Like, we sold out both two games, and, there's a demand for that.
Absolutely.
And that would be so good for the city.
Yep.
I mean, we have three of the best players in the league right now, like Monroe, Saunier, Turnbull. They're like Turnbull, Saunier won gold medal.
Yeah.
And Ellie Monroe's going to win one too. And just like men's, like we have Nate, we have Sid, and we have Brett.
And, and I think those are the types of things that Halifax should be going for. Like, I think that's an attainable goal to get a PWHL team and turn Halifax into a hotbed for PWHL hockey. I think that is a real opportunity for us.
You're right. And just think if all the other things that trickle down, like, if they can get a professional women's hockey team, this will be so good for the city.
Yep, agree 100%.
And the province of Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
People would come from all over to watch it.
And I mean, we've seen
Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, and we've seen already what the PWHL has done for just women's hockey in general. The fact that girls are seeing this now, and to have the opportunity to have a Halifax team would be incredible. Listen, Chris, I got to break down got to head down to the news. I thank you so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.
All right. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks for the support.
Awesome.
All right.
You're a really good shammer.
Thanks. It is 11:28. 902-405-6000 is the number. Out of town, 1-877-801-8255. Give us a call if you want to be a part of the Friday free-for-all. We are going to break for the news. We have Blake Priddle standing by. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Friday Free-for-All. This is your chance to talk. If you're worried about your power bill, excited about wind energy, you skeptical or optimistic about the homelessness numbers in Halifax, are you outraged by the headlines coming out of the U.S.? Let's go. It's time to talk. 902-405-6000 is the number, or 1-877-801-8255. Well, it seems that Nova Scotia is going against the grain when it comes to rent prices. There's a new report out from rentals.ca and Urbanization that shows the average rents in Canada actually went down 3.1% in 2025. Except if you live in Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba. Those three provinces actually saw increases in the average rent. Now, according to the report, Nova Scotia's average monthly rent, $2,268. That is the second highest in Canada behind British Columbia. Now, the needs assessment that was done in 2021 by the provincial government showed that housing pressures were mostly a supply and demand situation. But I don't know if supply and demand is going to get us out of this problem, out of this hole. Certainly critics are saying that this situation is a further argument for real rent control that would, address the concerns that folks are using those fixed-term leases, landlords using those as a way to circumvent the rent cap. What do you think? Do you think we need real rent control in Nova Scotia? 902-405-6000, the number, or 1-877-801-8255. Now, the rent cap only applies to periodic leases and when a new fixed-term lease is signed between a landlord and existing tenant, but it doesn't apply when a new tenant signs those fixed-term leases. And so a lot of times what's happening, you've got renters that are doing the fixed-term leases. The time is up. The landlord says goodbye. You got to go. And that tenant leaves and the landlord can jack up the rent for the next tenant. So, average rents continue to go up. Certainly that is of concern. And I think we're seeing the data as a result. What do you think? Do you think that real rent control is something that we need to bring in? I certainly think that we need to be doing more to help control what happens with rents. I know that as a society, as a city, we're at a constant loggerheads between housing being a human right and housing being a commodity to be bought and sold. And I think we see that clash of those two ideals at play here in the rental market in Nova Scotia. And Chris is joining us now. 902-405-6000 is how Chris reached us. Good morning.
Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning.
You're talking about your rent controls.
Yes. What's on your mind?
Well, I spent between 35 and 40 years as a landlord owning and renting apartments.
Yep. Not an easy gig.
No, it's not an easy gig, but the fixed term lease is not the problem. What has happened is the government instituted a control on the rent, right? Like 5% or whatever.
The rent cap, yes.
The rent cap,
yeah,
sorry.
It came in during COVID.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I had talked at the time before they brought it in to a couple of people in the provincial government and tried to explain to them the way it should be done. Of course, it fell on deaf ears. What they should have done is just like was happening back in the 80s. I went through rent control all throughout the 1980s. Mm-hmm. We had rent control. And the rent control was on the apartment, had nothing to do with the tenant.
Yeah.
If apartment number 1 was occupied by Lisa Blackburn and she was paying $1,000 a month, and then Chris moves in and the rent is still capped at $1,000 a month. It doesn't work that way now. That's why landlords are taking advantage of fixed-term leases, because they know that the capped rent applies to that existing tenant, and that's not the way it should work. We had rent controls back in the 80s, as I said, and they set increases, automatic increases that you were allowed to take yearly without a rent review of 2%, 3%, 4%, whatever it might have been.
Okay.
If you felt as a landlord that you needed more than that, you had to submit paperwork and have a review of that. They would look at your documentation, your projection for the upcoming year, and the Rent Review Commission would decide whether or not your 5%, 10%, whatever you were asking for, if it was justified.
Mm-hmm.
If they felt it was justified, you could get it. So you could get more than what the allowable increase each year was. Many landlords didn't even bother to raise the rents any more than the 2% or 3% per year because they didn't want to do the paperwork.
Yeah. Do we need to go back to that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely you do. Because, Lisa, think about it. If you put the controlled rent or the capped rent is attached to the tenant who happens to be living in that unit at this time, they boot the tenant out, the tenant leaves on their own, whatever, then the landlord can double the rent, can do whatever they want to with it. But if the controlled rent is on the unit. The unit is the thing that should be controlled in cost. It should have nothing to do with the tenant that was there. As far as fixed term leases, I used a lot of fixed term leases because my buildings were mainly in South End and areas where it was close to universities.
A lot
and
of
stuff.
students then.
I got a lot of students.
Yeah.
So I might have a student come to me and say, look, I got one term left and that's all I need it for, September to December. Can you rent it to me?
And in cases like that, a fixed term lease does make sense.
And I would rent it to them, no problem. You know, I had all kinds of that kind of stuff because if you force a person to sign a lease that's longer than they really want or need, they're going to leave at the end of the time that they have to anyway.
Yeah.
It's not going to make any difference. But the government, and I hope there's somebody in Houston's government listening to this show, because you are so off on how you're trying to control, in italics, how you're trying to control rents. They're doing it all the wrong way. And just as I've explained, I hope I explained it in a way that people can understand. The situation is really very simple, and I can't imagine that our provincial government was so short-sighted that they couldn't see the result of what they were doing.
Yeah. All right,
it's unbelievable.
Thank you so much for that. Much appreciated, Chris. You have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, 405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back to the phone lines where Patrick is standing by. Hey, Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Lisa. How are you today?
So far, so good. What's on your mind?
So on the rent controls, in Halifax right now, you have a lot of apartments that are coming on board, and these big new buildings that are coming on board, charging over $2,000 for a one-bedroom, very expensive rates for two bedrooms. But they're charging those rates because they have to, right? So we're not looking at the lower end market when those rates are charged, because if they don't charge those rates, they can't cover their expenses. So, I have some units that I rent out, and I have one right now that's well below market level because the rent was so low back in 2017. My expenses are going up, right? But that rent no longer covers my expenses. So while you're talking about the renters, right, there's the landlords that people are forgetting about that are carrying these costs, carrying the excruciating cost increases that we're experiencing. And I think, people are forgetting about the landlords and what, risk they're taking, as well as the expenses that are incurred and the revenues that are needed in order for them to maintain their business. Right? So I know three gentlemen just bought a 11-unit building in which they inherited rents that were $475. And for what they paid for that building, they could never, ever afford to keep those people in that building. Now, it's sad that those folks are in that situation, paying those low rents that are needed to come up to something of more of a market value so they can actually afford to pay their bills owning the building. So, I think it's a very, very difficult situation right now. I feel sorry for younger people right now in terms of affordability. I think Poilievre, when he speaks in the House of Commons, he talks about groceries. I think there's a bigger need in terms of our issues at hand. I think rents, taxes, water bills, everything's going up. And they're going up for the landlords. And I think we can't forget about the landlords and their responsibilities to cover their costs. And, they can't build buildings and take losses. So if the government wants to really get into affordable units, which, the whole, I'm going to build a building on Almond Street and my rents are $2,000 and I'm going to get a rebate from the government because I'm having affordable rents in those buildings, which is 25% less than market value.
Right.
It still doesn't work for people of lower incomes.
So
I think
guess,
the government. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Patrick, that I guess some of the stories that we hear though about these units that they're going up after fixed term lease tenant A leaves and fixed term lease tenant B moves in, that the difference in the rent is sometimes $500, $600, $700. And so are those current rents really reflecting the real cost of living or doing business, or at what point does it just become exploitive?
So, Lisa, I have a unit right now that's probably $600 or $700 less than market value. Okay?
Okay.
Say it's about $700 less than market value. So my tenant moves out. I'm going to raise that rent by $700.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to say, shame on you. You're almost doubling that rent. But at the end of the day, Lisa, that's $700. That's taking money away from my family, right?
Right.
In order for us to survive as a landlord. So I have every right to charge a market rent. Understand?
Yep.
So if the government really wants to have affordable rents, and they do, and I agree that there should be affordable rents that are not $2,000 for a one-bedroom, maybe $800 to $1,000, then the government's going to have to start getting into buying buildings in the city of Halifax or HRM, and they just did, I think they just bought 6 buildings in Truro and Halifax. But they're going to have to continue doing that to help out seniors, people with disabilities, certain groups of lower incomes, so they can have apartments to live in. Because the new buildings that are being built aren't for lower income people.
Mm.
They're not for immigrants coming into the city, and those rents are being charged because they have to be charged that high because they got to cover the excruciating costs that it takes to build these buildings.
Yeah. And really, you know, there is a cheaper alternative available, and that's renovating existing stock.
Taking office the government could take office buildings that are up for sale and buy those and convert those into apartments.
There you go. Certainly something that we discussed at the council table on more than one occasion. Yep.
There was a building on the corner of it's where Dirty Nelly's is. That was an office building. Somebody bought it for $1 million 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and they turned it into apartments.
Yep.
They're laughing now, right? They're charging market rents, but I'm saying the government could get into something like that and have more of a repository of units that are needed for lower income people, right? So there's a lot of seniors out there right now. My mother's one of them who's on a fixed income. And if she was hypothetically evicted, she owns a condo, but if she was renting and only paying like say $1,000 or $1,100 a month, and if she was evicted, she would have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So those are the situations that we need to fix in our province to protect those people in need.
All right, Patrick.
And I don't think, but anyways, thanks a lot for listening to me.
No, appreciate your time.
I enjoy watching your show. Thank you so much.
All right, Patrick, thank you so very much. 902-405-6000, the number, or 1-877-801-8255. We're going to go back to the phone lines, and David is joining us.
Hi, Lisa. Yeah, sorry, just wanted to respond to the previous caller there and just sort of saying that, you know, investors, we'll call them anyway, who buy buildings that have low rents, paying the high prices that they do, have no choice but to raise the rents. Well, I guess if you purchase a building knowing that the rents are really high or really low within it, why are you paying a high price for that building? And I think the obvious answer is because you either plan to renovate and raise the rents, or you plan to demolish that building and build a new building with much higher rents. So it's sort of, that's a sort of choice that they're making, and it's sort of as an investment in order to make more money in the future. So I'm not really sure that kind of argument applies, but I do definitely sort of agree that there is room for the government. And I mean, you can look at other sort of aspects of the economy. You know, food, it's a free market enterprise. You can open a restaurant, you can open a grocery store, you can do whatever you want. Right. But selling that stuff is highly regulated because it is beyond just a sort of basic, commodity. It has importance to society and, all this kind of thing, health, safety, but just sort of, keeping the population well fed. So, I mean,
Listen, David, can I get you to just hang on for a quick second? We have to go for a quick break, but I'd love to dig into this a bit more.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay,
all right,
thank you.
Just hang on the line. We got 902-405-6000 is the number. As I said, we're going to take a quick break. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. And the Friday free-for-all continues here. 902-405-6000 to get in on the conversation. If you're out of town, dial us toll-free, 1-877-801-8255. I guess everything's toll-free now, isn't it? Listen, we're going to go back to the phone lines. David, you've been patiently waiting. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no.
So, continue.
I basically, I was just almost finished my thought there, but sort of, other aspects of the economy sort of exist within the realm of the free market yet are highly regulated just because of the sort of importance of those sectors, to the general well-being and prosperity of society. So food being an example, health and safety, all that kind of thing, but just sort of, also trying to ensure that people have access to food as well, too. So, I mean, obviously, I think housing would fall into that category. Now, what I'm not going to sort of estimate is the sort of complexity of doing that. I mean, sort of with food, we regulate for health and safety. We haven't really found a way to sort of reliably ensure that everybody has inexpensive, high quality food. We have things like food banks and whatnot, but those are sort of stopgap measures. So, I mean,
but we need that. But, perhaps there's an argument that we need that for rent, because certainly there are some jurisdictions, municipalities, that have rent banks for that very reason, that when you have a short-term emergency and you need a few extra bucks to pay your rent, the rent bank is there to sort of backstop you until you can pay them back. So, certainly those are tools that can be used to help keep people in their homes.
Yeah, and I think that's it. And I mean, it's sort of this very complex issue. So, I mean, obviously there's going to be winners and losers and costs and all that kind of stuff and issues of fairness. But yeah, there are definitely things that can be done. And I mean, when I was young, I lived in England for a couple of years because that's where my family is from. And the building I lived in wasn't rent controlled at the time, but at the time it was built over 125 years prior to that, as sort of low-income affordable housing for people like firefighters, policemen, school teachers who at the time weren't paid very well and sort of, lived within the sort of realm of poverty and stuff like that. And the reason being is just those people are necessary for the sort of functioning of your city. So, I mean, for a well-ordered, stable society, you have to house people in a relative sort of, comfort. And I guess the thing we had in Nova Scotia is that in years past, we had a housing surplus. We had old buildings that were deteriorating that sort of nobody knew what to do with, and people were willing to let them out inexpensively, and even let them inexpensively to sort of say, let's call them problematic tenants who might sort of cause damage to the building or be disruptive, but, it didn't really matter because the building was old and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we are dealing with a new reality, and it's it's new territory for us, so that we don't know what to do or have the answers. It's quite understandable.
And I mean, you mentioned that you lived in England for a time, and I mean, they do housing completely different over in the UK for sure. I think they have almost 20% of their housing designated as affordable or deeply affordable.
Yeah, council flats, public housing. But I think in like Finland or, Sweden, anyway, the Scandinavian countries, I think it's like as high as like 50 or 70% as well, too, where, the rental properties are sort of state owned and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's, there are solutions, none of them are easy, but it's costs and benefits. And is that sort of going to be better than the situation we have now? So.
Yeah, a lot to learn. We could learn a lot from the Nordic countries and from what the UK is doing in housing for sure. Yeah,
in the Nordic countries, they seem to get everything right. Society, rent, but military, and also just quality of military.
Quality of life in general. Yeah, I was in the absolute pleasure of being in Stockholm about 6-8 years ago, and I mean, you just get that vibe from the moment you step off the plane that they've got the whole work-life balance thing completely under control.
Yeah, well, let's hope we can figure that out someday, too. Thank you, Lisa.
All right, thank you so much, David, for your time. And listen, that is going to wrap up the Friday Free-for-All. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We'll have another open hour coming up on Monday's program. It is 11:58. Boy, do we have a treat coming up after the news with Blake Priddle. We are going to sit down and talk politics, Nova Scotia politics, for the next 30 minutes with none other than Jordi Morgan and Matt Whynot. Join us if you will, please. It's going to be a good time. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. And welcome back to the Friday show. Oh, for the next 30 minutes, we got a treat for you. We are going to take a step back, look at the bigger political picture here in Nova Scotia and, how provincial and federal politics are starting to intersect in some interesting ways. This month alone, we've had some debate over rising power rates, questions about whether the premier should be more visible during those utility hearings. There's renewed momentum around offshore wind. At the same time, critics are pointing out how little the legislature actually sat last year, one of the shortest fall sittings in decades, and that sparked concerns about transparency, accountability, and whether MLAs have enough time to properly debate the issues. Layered on top of that is what's happening federally. We've seen MPs crossing the floor that's shifting the balance of power in Ottawa. Pierre Poilievre making a pit stop in Yarmouth this week. That's a place that he does not visit by accident. So how does this all fit together, and what does it tell us about how the province is being governed and how opposition parties are positioning themselves? To have this conversation, we are joined by Matt Whynot, former NDP MLA, and Jordi Morgan from Enterprise Canada, who's been involved with Conservative politics both federally and provincially for the last 25 years or so. Good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. We would have a Liberal here too, but none of them want to talk to us for some reason. I'm kidding.
But it's not Enterprise like the car rental place, though.
Thanks, Matt. No, Enterprise Canada is a strategic communications firm, is what we call ourselves. So we do strategic communications and marketing, and we talk about big stuff.
Big picture stuff. That's kind of what we're here to do today, too. When you look at the headlines this month, what is standing out to you as the most consequential political story for Nova Scotians right now?
I mean, I would say the public enemy number one is Nova Scotia Power. It has been for many, many years. Just the, with the hearings going on, asking for these rate increases, plus all the, I would call it a gong show that's gone over the last in the last year in particular around the breach and that type of thing. The fact that the executives and the premier the executives showed up, but they didn't actually testify. They brought their staff in, and
that was new. That's the first time I understand that ever happened.
Yeah. So I mean, what I find interesting there is sort of the accountability piece to that, this is a big deal. Rate increases have happened year over year. I think many governments have tried to slow those increases. Here we are with a situation where the premier, who made himself the Minister of Energy, didn't even show up to
and I guess
that.
I guess one of the things that sort of, and I understand power rates, increase. The cost of increasing, the cost of doing business is increasing. But how do you square that when the shareholders have a guaranteed 9% return on their investment?
Well, I don't know how long this debate has been going on, but what the result of this is in the circumstance that you have, is that it ends up landing in the lap of the premier or the government in power at the time to somehow place itself in between ratepayers and the utility. And for a lot of politicians, it's not an uncomfortable place to be. Some people do it with a little more comfort than others. But I think in the last couple of iterations, and I think going back to the time you were in government, I think your boss was pretty much in the same position. That's where they find themselves. And here we have another situation with this securitization of assets that I didn't even use the word securitization until yesterday when I found myself looking it up and going, what is that anyway? It's essentially it's like a mortgage tool. It's taking an asset and you finance it, and then what you're doing is you're spreading out costs of something that you're retiring over a long period. But I think where the premier is coming in on that is he's saying, look, we don't need ratepayers to be looking at this over a long period of time. But the politics of it all is fairly simple, is that if a politician is going to be seen to be looking after the interests of their constituents, then they put themselves in between the power corporation and the people.
Yeah, and I mean, the premier really has inserted himself into this by making himself energy minister. More
so than most. I mean, well, the energy minister position, I think, is an entirely different, from an entirely different perspective. It's not necessarily, while there are implications around Nova Scotia Power. One of the things that Premier Houston has done and has been trying to do is look at how we are going to develop our natural resources. Part of that is, the idea around Wind West. He got a report from a very prominent Liberal who said, look, we've got more wind offshore than we do in the legislature, so perhaps we should be using that as a power source. And now we start seeing there are people with some interest in it. I saw there was a French company that's teaming up with Hanwha, which is the Korean multinational. They're looking at some interest around that. But I think from the point of view of from the Premier is that being the Minister of Energy is that if you're dealing with energy resource matters, then you're going to the guy who's going to be able to talk to, or the person who's going to be responsible for making those decisions. And from a positioning point of view, it does make some sense at a time when we need to develop new and more effective energy and higher levels of resources, so that our resource development is a very, very important part of our economic development. And we can have that discussion as well.
So the legislature sat for very few days last year, and that's drawn some criticism. Is that something that actually matters to voters, or is this more inside baseball that's more concerned about process and accountability?
I would say that it's a little bit of both. Like, I think that
more of one than the other.
Sure. I think accountability, in my sense.
I like your insight on, does anybody really care? But
but I think there's a world where, people want to know that the Premier and the government that has their supermajority, as folks would call it, shows up to work in the legislature to be held accountable. Which means if you want to talk about power rates, and we talk about the Premier, in between the Premier, constituents, and the utility, for instance. What a great way to do that is show up and stand up for constituents and Nova Scotians in the legislature. So hopefully, this year, 2026, we have more of that. I mean, I think it was 12 days in the spring and 8 days in the fall. So that would be 20 days.
How's that stack up against other provinces?
I don't actually know. What I would say about that is that we're the only legislative assembly in the country that doesn't have an actual set calendar that's not at the call of the government, which there's a whole, we can unpack that and why that's a bad idea, in particular for people who want to get involved in politics, in particular women, and the crazy schedules that the legislature sits, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I would say that, showing up, making sure that the legislature sits, and doing the debate that's important, and making yourself available to media, the lack thereof that exists currently, and those types of things. I think it needs to be discussed, and the Premier should show up for in that historic chamber.
What do you say, Jordi?
I'm kind of split on this. I mean, I don't. If there's an agenda, if there's a legislative agenda, if the legislative agenda is able to be completed over a period of time, frankly, I think that a lot of MLAs are probably better off serving their constituent issues in their constituency. You were there. Yeah. How much time did you spend in the ledge versus the work the actual job you had to do? So, I mean, your constituency work is, and for someone like yourself who understands, what elected office is like and representing constituents are like, that is the bulk of the work. I get the criticism is one that an opposition party is always going to make, because, especially in a situation where you have a majority government like this, because the opposition is looking for opportunities to get its message out there. And to do that, when the House is sitting, that's the most opportune time to do it. I understand why the criticism is there. I'm not going to, debase the validity of somebody saying, yes, we need to have more accountability and whatnot. I think the level of scrutiny on the government is probably sufficient. There are holes everywhere. As somebody who's in the media, there's lots of times that you want to get, be a little bit more, have a little bit more insight into what the inner workings are. But at the same time, if the business of the government and the agenda that they're putting forward, that they promised to put forward, is being done, then are we putting in, what are we putting in more days for? And if and the same thing, you remember when, you were in a majority government situation. Did you want to spend a whole lot more time sitting there taking questions from the opposition?
I mean, one of my favorite times is actually going out, knocking on doors, and doing the constituency
100%.
Yeah. And at the same time, we have, I mean, some of the overspending stuff without oversight of the legislature is concerning, I think, to the general public, that not all parties in the legislature were able to okay some of this stuff that took place last year. So that would be an example of where it's like, okay, where does this stuff come from? That will happen in the budget process coming up in March or whenever that's going to go.
And we have an Auditor General that does a pretty good job too.
Yeah.
Now you may say that they do it in retrospect, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, this is, as long as you have some window into what's going on that you have a fair amount of confidence in, then I think that, we end up having the same debate. It may be a little bit later. I will say, am I a big fan of March Madness? I spent a lot of time at CFIB beating up the government of the day about saying, why is it that we have to have all of this spending at the end of the year to clear out budgets? You could take that and put it back in the Treasury and it'll be there for later. But the oversight of spending, I think, is an issue that needs more ventilation. I don't think it's anything particularly new. I think that, this is something that has gone on for a long time and could probably, I do believe in the work of the Auditor General. Sometimes it's uncomfortable for governments to see what's, being said by somebody who has a dispassionate voice on accountability. But that's part of the democratic process, and it's a useful part.
It is a useful part, but when someone, I would argue that when a sitting government decides to reduce the powers of the Auditor General, like they tried to do last year, and got some pretty big blowback.
So I say, how did that go?
Right, some pretty big blowback from the public. I think shows how great it is that we do have an Auditor General. At the same time, I think that the people that sit in that house are accountable to the people. The Auditor General is there for 10 years and will be in that role until they're no longer appointed. Yeah. In particular, I think there's situations currently that's happening, one around spending, one around Nova Scotia Power, healthcare. There's some things that the Premier could be standing up on his feet and talking a little bit more about, in my mind.
All right, listen, we're going to take a quick break. It is 12:17, and we're joined now with Jordi Morgan from Enterprise Canada and Matt Whynot, former NDP MLA, talking Nova Scotia politics. We're going to take a quick break. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. And welcome back. 12:21, and we're talking Nova Scotia politics with Jordi Morgan and Matt Whynot. And, it looks like federal politics came to Nova Scotia's doorstep this week. We had Pierre Poilievre, who popped into town and made a visit to Yarmouth. That's certainly a place he does not visit by accident. There's been MPs crossing the floor.
It does take some effort to get there.
It does, yes. He definitely...
look, let's pull in here. We just happened to be driving by on the way to Barrington.
Nice way of saying it was very calculated. What are you thinking about it?
Well, it makes sense. And I think it's part of a broader tour. I think somebody was Power and Politics, or one of those shows that that's the life I have. Yeah. So, but somebody was calling it the Pierre Poilievre Love Me Tour. But I forget where I heard that. But the thing is, he's obviously got a job to do ahead of the gathering in Calgary, where his leadership is going to happen. So it all just, he's not just visiting people from, Manitoba West. He's doing a tour of the country, as I understand it. There's also
trying to mend some fences as well with the provincial leaders.
I'm not entirely sure he spent a lot of time, doing that here. The one thing that I know about Mr. Poilievre is that he is very much a constituency kind of guy, right? Yeah. He'll go into a riding. He's not really particularly interested in, talking to anybody other than the people who are going to vote for him. There are folks of influence and whatnot that like to show up these things, but he likes talking. He likes getting into, he's like a John Buchanan kind of politician, right? Where he's into, I don't think fiscally, but anyway, I won't get into that. But he's kind of guy who likes to get into the Tim Hortons and talk to the people on the ground. And the other thing that is interesting about this is that there have been a couple of pretty credible candidates that have put their hand up down in that riding.
Okay.
And so I think that he wanted to see what that felt like what are the riding association folks saying about, somebody coming in who's going to be representing the Conservatives in the next riding. I'm not even sure that Chris D'Entremont is going to be running for the Liberals next time. He's had a pretty good run. Now he loves it and he wants to keep doing it, but given what's happened to him over the past while, I think there's and again, I don't like to speculate, but seeing as you asked me to, there are people who are saying that it is less likely. Let's say that. I wouldn't say unlikely, but it's less likely that he's going to be representing the Liberals in the next election. It'd be a tough slog for him. So therefore, you have a riding that has no incumbents. So there are now some pretty credible candidates. Carrie Graham from Greenwood. She's involved in municipal politics there. Colin Sproul, who's in the fishing industry, very well-known name there. You don't know him, do you, Matt?
I think that the Acadie Annapolis, the fact that he went and visited there is interesting. One is obviously it's a poke in the face to Chris.
Yeah.
Saying, I actually finally came here because he didn't come during the election or any time he's been leader, is my understanding.
No, he's been down there before, but
in the riding.
Yeah.
In the riding?
I think he's been in Digby before. I could be wrong.
Okay, yeah, I don't think he has. At least since he's been leader. I think that the size of the gathering that he grew was quite small, considering some of the things that other times that he's come to Nova Scotia. I mean, you've got two
anything compared to the crowds he had the last time during the election would be seen as small.
Sure,
he had huge crowds here.
But I think at the same time, it is a poke in the face to Chris. It's kind of a na to Chris. I'm here. I'm gonna try to get this seat back. I think that I think regardless, floor crossing is an interesting topic. It happens in our system. There are situations in particular. Give an example. Federally, in the NDP federally, we have this a policy where you can leave the party, you can sit as an independent, but you can caucus with us, but you have to win a nomination and run as a New Democrat in order to sit in actual caucus. So those types of things are interesting. But floor crossings have happened in this province. They've happened across the country. We've seen it time and time again. I think what concerns me the most is how vile some of the stuff that has come out because Chris crossed the floor. From really good people, regardless of political stripe or whatever, that I've seen online, and I just don't think it needs to. We can state a facts. We just don't need to call people cowards and just unheard of names that I just don't think is helpful in the conversation.
I try to avoid the comment sections in Facebook.
No, it's not comments
or whatever it is. You mean the postings?
The
well,
postings.
Whatever. I think that's probably a broader problem just in terms of the way people show up on social media. Period. But the one thing that happens during a floor crossing is that there are people who go out and they're knocking on doors for you. Maybe it's not necessarily all because of you. It may be because, there maybe have been people knocking on the door for you because they like Jack Layton or that they like Alexa McDonough or seeing as I'm in a room full of dippers. No, but I mean, you know what I mean. There are people who believe in the cause, right?
Yep.
So when that happens, there is, I think, a sense of betrayal. And I don't think that it should be unexpected. Like, getting online and calling somebody names and calling them down in ways that are personally attacks and that kind of stuff. Nobody likes to see that, but I do understand when people want to vent because they feel like they have been betrayed. Because betrayal is one of those it's a visceral thing, right? Yeah. So if you've been out there, you spent several weeks out banging doors because you happen to love Pierre Poilievre or you were a Stephen Harper fan or whatever reason that you were a conservative. Maybe you were a provincial conservative and you just felt there was a certain loyalty there to the color. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when he left, he was elected on a specific principle that he was putting forward, that he carried forward all the way up until the time that he decided to leave. And then he said, okay, well, things have changed enough that I've changed my mind. And that's going to affect people, I think, viscerally. So I don't think it's unexpected. I think every floor crossing we've ever seen, most of them anyway, the ones that are at least unexpected or relatively unexpected, because there have been some that are, as you will remember,
Yes.
are fairly expected.
Yes.
And has happened here in Nova Scotia that you don't get quite the same kind of blowback. But we have seen that federal politics has been a little bit more dynamic in that sense, anyway.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
All right,
Sorry.
listen, we're gonna have to end it there for this time. Thank you so very much, Jordi Morgan from Enterprise Canada, Matt Whynot, former NDP MLA, all things Nova Scotia politics for a Friday. Really appreciate your time and your insight.
well, thank you. I don't know how much value we brought, but you got what you paid for.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was
Have us
great.
back, Lisa.
Thanks
Will
very
do.
much for the invite,
Will do.
Lisa.
All right, it is 10:29, and news up next with Blake Priddle. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. And welcome back. Looking ahead to the weekend now, it's almost here, and Halifax has been seeing a mix of weather, typical January pattern. But, before we get to that, another big weather story that's been with us for months, the drought conditions in parts of Nova Scotia. Still, of course, feeling the effects of the summer drought. Those dry conditions still lingering in some areas despite some good precipitation that we've had in the last little while. And to help us both unpack the short-term and long-term situation, we're joined now by 95.7 News meteorologist Allister Aalders. Welcome.
Hello, Lisa. Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess now.
Yeah, excellent. Great to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be in.
Let's start local. How's the weekend shaping up for Halifax in terms of, what's going to fall from the sky, temperatures, that sort of thing? If we're traveling, if we got hockey tournaments to go to this weekend, what do we need to face?
Busy time of year, and the weather, I think active or unsettled is a good word, although I think daytime conditions generally okay. So we had the rain this morning. It's starting to clear out, but the temperature's falling today. So the concern this afternoon and this evening is that any wet roads or untreated sidewalks and surfaces will become slippery just because we will be falling back to and below the freezing mark this afternoon.
Okay.
So take care if you are traveling this afternoon and tonight, and hopefully the crews will be out shortly to put that salt down. The wind's really ramping up this afternoon, gusting to 70, possibly at times 80. So it's a windy, and a reminder that it is still January. Despite how mild it has been, it's going to be a lot cooler as we go through later today and the night tonight. But then we're back above freezing Saturday with chance of a flurry in the afternoon, otherwise quiet. But then a system coming in Saturday night with possibly a period of wet snow, but mixing over to showers. Sunday, quiet to start, cloudy. There's another coastal low that will be coming up, and there's still quite a bit of uncertainty. I'm going to be looking at the latest guidance this afternoon. A lot of the models indicating that it would likely be a snow or a snow-rain mixed event where it will be tracking offshore, where as opposed to this latest pattern, the systems have been farther north, so it's been bringing in temperatures that are warm enough. This looking like perhaps a mixed weather event Sunday night and for Monday morning. So if you have travel plans during that time, and if it does end up being largely a snow event, that morning commute Monday could be impacted. So that's kind of what I'm watching right now. There's no shortage of weather to talk about.
Yeah, so the timeline for this, we've got a fairly clear timeline that it's going to start sort of overnight, and then when people are trying to get to work and school, Monday is when we're going to face the worst of it?
For the most part. Some of the models are, try to bring, especially the Canadian model, which seems to be the outlier, tries to bring the more widespread precipitation in during the afternoon and evening, but most of the models holding it off until at least later in the evening and the overnight Sunday to Monday morning. And then it does look like that should clear out, I would say, by late morning, certainly the afternoon on Monday. So it's kind of that Monday or Sunday night, Monday morning time frame when we should keep an eye on that forecast. The scenarios really are, snow rain mix or possibly mostly rain.
Yeah.
The mostly rain scenario seems like the outlier solution right now. The trend has been a bit farther offshore, which would favor more snow or at least a snow rain mix. So I'll continue to keep an eye on that, but certainly watch the forecast through the upcoming weekend, especially if you do have travel plans and obviously for work and school on Monday.
Yeah. Any, at this stage might be a bit too early, but how much snow are we thinking that we might be faced with?
Well, it's still a bit unclear just because of that track, but if it were to track near or just to the west of Sable Island, it would be, I would say, like a moderate snowfall, possibly upwards or in excess of 15 centimeters.
Oh, okay, so we could get some warnings then.
It could be. It could.
Yeah.
I would expect at least statements to be issued with this system, if not warnings by later in the weekend. If it goes a bit farther offshore, more so to the east of Sable Island, the snow would be lighter and it would probably be a more minimal snowfall event, something, enough to make the roads a bit greasy, but manageable. So that's kind of what we're looking at now. But obviously, if the Canadian model is onto something that, the others aren't, it would be, very minimal snowfall. But like I said, the models they're all coming in right now. So I'll be taking a look at them this afternoon and listen on your drive home for the latest on that weather.
Sounds good. And you talked about how the roller coaster temperature-wise is continuing. That is a trend that we're seeing more and more as the years go on.
Especially, it's very pronounced now in the winter season where, this December was actually a bit of an anomaly where it was actually colder than normal. But the trend has been that our fall and winter seasons are warmer than normal. We're seeing those warmer temperatures, especially lingering into November and December, which has been impacting how much early season snowfall we're seeing. January and February, I find we're seeing, more fluctuations in the temperature, which, is not uncommon necessarily for our climate, but, certainly this does not feel like winter out there. And I know we always get, the January thaw, but this has been quite prolonged here this time around. The second half of the month is certainly looking colder. It looks like by, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, we're going to see a more classic winter pattern returning with cold temperatures. But as you mentioned, the spring is kind of the season where we haven't seen a lot of movement in average temperature. It's stayed relatively unchanged.
Okay.
When we're looking at how our climate patterns are changing, obviously warmer temperatures in the summer have become more common, and then it's really pronounced, especially in the fall and winter seasons, where we're seeing our greatest increases in average temperature here in Nova Scotia.
And that does not bode well for the drought situation, because my understanding is we need a good solid snowpack.
Yes.
That's just going to melt gently.
Exactly. And this is part of the problem that we're seeing with drought now in Nova Scotia, where the snowpack is not sustaining itself as long as it used to into the spring season, and it's melting a lot faster because we're seeing the warmer temperatures moving in, and we're not getting late season snowfall like we used to. March can still be a bit of a snowy month, especially the first half of it, but we're seeing less snow than we used to in late March and April. So that really does have an impact, because we really rely on that to help replenish the water tables for the upcoming, growing season in the late spring and summertime. And the problem we're in now is that we were in such a deep hole with no water, that we've had rain, a lot of rain, but you really need to have your average rainfall and then almost double that each month to try to make up for this drought. And while we have had December was a bit less than normal for parts of HRM, while we've had normal and even a bit above normal precipitation, the problem currently is that it's not really able to absorb into the ground as easily because it was frozen, so it's all running off. So that's been the problem now. And interestingly, the province is still in a moderate drought for everyone, and through parts of the valley and Fundy region, it's still considered a severe drought.
Wow.
Which I know is, you might be listening and thinking, how is that possible with all this rain and even the bit of snow we've had? But, there's just so many factors that go into it. It's not as simple as, well, it's been raining quite a bit. It takes a lot to happen to get into this situation with the drought, and it takes a lot to get out of it. There's a lot of mitigating factors, obviously, that impact that. So we really do, as much, if you love or hate the snow, we would really benefit from having a snowier second half of the winter that would sustain into the first part of the spring, so that we get that snow melt and runoff to help absorb into the water tables, because we obviously don't want to end up in a situation like last summer, and hard to know where we're going to end up this spring in terms of precipitation patterns and this upcoming summer, but it would be better to get ahead of that rather than going into the spring or early summer and we're already in a drought, and then if we face not saying it would be as severe I wouldn't expect it to be as severe or prolonged as what we just had. This was a bit of an exception. But obviously, in the summertime, our precipitation, fewer far between, not as much. It's very convective, so you often get it from very short weather events or thunderstorms, right? So it's we would really benefit from a snowy second half of the winter, love it or hate it, and a bit of a rainy spring. But we need sunshine too. The gray weather really has an impact on, it'd be really nice to have a bit of sunshine.
Yes.
Because it has been lacking lately. And it's very hard to strike that balance, unfortunately. But, if we can try, we can hope,
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, we'll leave it there for this week. Allister Aalders, 95.7 News Radio meteorologist. So glad to have you with us. Appreciate your insight today, and we'll chat again next week. It is 12:45. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk sports with Cecil Wright. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies, and you're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Back in a moment. Welcome back. 12:48 is the time, and it's time for sports with Cecil Wright. Good afternoon, Cecil, and welcome.
Good day, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. We're just keeping the ship afloat here until Dan gets back on the 26th, having some fun. And, boy, there's lots going on sports-wise. We've got a couple of Nova Scotia teams that are going to the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. We have professional women's hockey in Halifax that made a huge splash with the takeover tour, and some Mooseheads that are catching the eye of folks at the NHL draft.
And we've got NFL playoff football this weekend. That's one of my favorite things.
Oh, yes, that's huge. And big news in the NFL, the Washington Commanders have confirmed their plans for a new $3.7 billion stadium that they hope to open by 2030. And the Miami Dolphins reportedly getting offers near $15 billion for that franchise. Lots of business stuff going on in the NFL, but we're down to what, 4? Are we down to 4 teams now?
Yes, we are down to 8 teams.
8 teams. Okay.
There'll be 4 teams after this weekend. Yeah.
Okay, so this is.
But I have a question for you, though.
Oh, okay.
In Washington's new stadium, is it going to be called Trump Stadium?
Oh, Lord. You know what? I think he would probably want that. He's slapping his name on everything else.
Well, he asked them to name it after him. No joke.
Oh, really? I missed that, and usually I catch all the Trump-related news. That's just abysmal. Oh, good Lord.
The guy has no shame.
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. So what are some of the big matchups this weekend? How are my Seattle Seahawks doing?
They're doing very well, and they're playing, I think they're taking on San Francisco, the 49ers, which is going to be a rematch. It's going to be a great game, but I like the Seahawks' chances. They're at home, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I suppose, especially when it's we're now down to the one and done type of scenario where you're lost, you're done for the season and off golfing.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And then, of course, you got my Patriots. Let's not forget the Patriots now.
Now, how are they doing?
They are, well, first of all, they had 14 wins in the regular season after having 4 wins last year. So they turned it around big time. Now, I say that, and I admit that they had the easiest schedule in the league. But, when you come from winning 4 games, if you can, top that by 10, you're doing something correct. And I don't care which teams you're playing against.
Wow. So they've certainly bounced back. They've bounced back from the loss of Tom Brady.
Oh, yeah, they have. Tom Brady, though, he's part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, believe it or not. And I don't know. I'm sure that Bob Kraft would have welcomed him as a minority owner with the Patriots. So maybe Tom's just trying to send a message that he's divorcing himself completely from the Patriots.
Interesting. Did he leave on bad terms? I didn't think so, but...
Well, kinda. It was either him or Belichick. I think, Belichick has a rather assertive personality. Some people would call it abrasive. I'll call it assertive. And the Patriots decided that they were going to stick with him. And lo and behold, Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay and wins another Super Bowl. So I guess you have to say he won that battle.
Isn't that something? So a little closer to home, the Mooseheads. If you're a Halifax Mooseheads fan, you're certainly keeping an eye on the NHL draft this year. Multiple players on the NHL scouting list ahead of the 26 NHL entry draft. And we've got 6 Halifax players already on the radar for Central scouting. This is huge for us.
Yeah, we always have 1 or 2 players that are, on that list, but having this many 5 or 6 players is incredible. That is a huge slap on the back to Cam Russell and everybody involved with the Mooseheads, their scouting team. They've done a really good job over the past few years, and I think the future bodes really well for the Halifax Mooseheads.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that speaks volumes to our player development here.
Absolutely. And I give credit to the scouts because, they have done a good job with their scouting and their trades, always getting a real decent overager, a 20-year-old. It's not easy, and they're out there competing against, 35 other teams or how many other teams there are. It's not easy to get some of these guys, and especially you're going up against guys who are considering going to the U.S. college system because they've got a good system down there as well. So I give our guys a lot of credit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredible for a team that is, my understanding is that this Moosehead team is very young. Yeah.
Extremely young.
Wow.
But they're young and talented, and they've got good coaching. And, like I said early in the year, I think I was talking to Dan about this, I got my fingers crossed for the playoffs because if all goes well and if they stay healthy, they could surprise.
And now, so how would this work if some of these players are picked up in the NHL draft? Do they still continue playing for the Mooseheads, or do the Mooseheads? Yes. Okay, so that it's not going to break up the team or anything like that.
No, the NHL teams would draft for the rights for the player, and let's say they draft somebody who's 18 years of age. Well, they're going to stay here with the Mooseheads for now. They might stay even next year. But when they're ready for professional hockey, whatever team drafts them would have their rights. So they would go to the training camp for the Bruins, for instance, if the Bruins drafted them.
All right. And going to flip over to the NBA now because the commissioner, Adam Silver, has confirmed that he's in exploratory talks about an NBA Europe League that would involve some top European clubs. That's certainly sign that the league is considering expansion, but why not expansion further into North America?
You mean like Halifax, for instance?
Well, don't know about that. I don't know if we're ready to support an NBA team, but certainly there must be markets in North America that are primed and ready. And if the NBA is looking to expand, why not further into Canada as opposed to going all the way to Europe?
Well, I think the NFL has proven to be very successful in having games in Europe. All the stadiums have been sold out, and we're talking about those big old soccer stadiums that, hold 100,000 people.
Wow.
And I think that Silver is trying to take a page away from them and thinking that basketball has always been extremely popular in Europe, and I think they think that they could probably make themselves a nice little pretty penny. If they're able to expand in Europe. I think they could, but I agree with you. I would prefer to see them stick in North America. There are all kinds of cities that I think could host the team as well.
Yeah, we tried it in Vancouver, but, what's to say we couldn't try again?
Well, I agree. And I think Vancouver is an excellent city. And I think that if they were to put another franchise there, they'd be surprised at how well it does.
Excellent. And just to wrap up, some great news for curling fans in Nova Scotia. We've got 2 teams competing at the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. That doesn't happen all that often.
No, it doesn't. We're lucky if we have one team. No, we always have one team, but having 2, it puts a little extra pressure on both teams too, But I've got to tell you, people don't understand how much I have come to enjoy watching curling.
Oh, yeah.
It is, and they are so good. I don't know, like they throw a stone and it just misses another stone by like a quarter of an inch to go into the house and all that stuff. Man, it's amazing how good they are.
Yeah. So the first time since 2005, 2 teams will be at the Scotty Tournament of Hearts, which is coming up January 23rd to February 1st in Mississauga, Ontario. Listen, we're going to leave it at that for this week. Cecil, thank you so very much.
Always a pleasure.
All right. You take care and have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, it is 12:58, and that does it for us for this week. Listen, before we wrap up, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who made this show happen, to all of our guests who shared their time and insight, the callers who brought their energy and perspective, especially to our producer, Vanessa Vandenes, who keeps everything running smoothly behind the scenes. Really appreciate you choosing to spend some of your time with us. Have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you back here on Monday. I'm Lisa Blackburn from Forward Strategies. You're with the Todd Veinotte Show on 95.7 News Radio. Have a great weekend.